Welcome to the Daily Insider here on VegasInsider.com. I am Kevin Rogers for Friday, October 15th, 2021. We're halfway through October. Moving right along. NBA starts next week. NHL already underway through a few days. College football, NFL in full swing. We're down to 4 teams in Major League Baseball. So a lot going on. Very busy October. And we're going to speak with the college football money leader at VegasInsider.com, Kyle Hunter, coming up in just a moment. But before we do that, first, we want to tell you about our fine friends at DraftKings, or at BetMGM, excuse me. We talked about DraftKings yesterday, but BetMGM, we're going to tell you about them right now. They are the king of sports books, and they have a great promotion going on right now. Bet $10 to win $200 if your team scores a touchdown. Bet on any NFL money line, and if your team scores a touchdown, you'll receive an additional $200 in free bets. This is for new players only, and you must be 21 years or older, and it's only eligible in Arizona, New Jersey, Indiana, Colorado, Tennessee, West Virginia, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C. only. Full terms and conditions apply. That is BetMGM. They are the king of sportsbooks. And right now, the guy who's the king of college football, it's Kyle Hunter. I mean, Kyle, we welcome you back in. The numbers are unbelievable. You're 28-7-1 in college football this year. It's 80%. I know we don't want to jinx it. We don't want to do any of that, but it's amazing right now what you're doing.
Yeah, it's been a great start to the season, Kevin. This is a lot of fun. It's not always going to go this way. Obviously, I'm always honest and transparent about how things go. But college football has been a strong sport for me long run. And totals have been my thing, and I've played a lot of totals this year. So I plan to keep doing that. We'll have a few sides mixed in, but pretty totals heavy for my college football. So already have a couple plays up here for this weekend, and I'll be loading some more here later today there at VegasInsider.com.
Yeah, 4-1 last week. You had Wisconsin, Illinois under, Georgia, Auburn under. Only loss was the Michigan, Nebraska game that went over the total, but still pretty solid job there. 4-1. I mean, 28-7-1. I mean, nobody can dispute that 80%. So let's look now at the Saturday card, Kyle, and let's begin in the Big 12. Oklahoma State and Texas, and obviously, for the Longhorns, very tough spot for them after they were 28-7 on Oklahoma in the Red River Showdown. They were in cruise control. All of a sudden, Oklahoma pulls their quarterback. They come back. They win in the final seconds. So now you wonder what the Longhorns will do now against a feisty Oklahoma State team. It's always exciting when these two get together. What are your thoughts on this matchup in Austin?
Yeah, this line has come down a bit. Definitely some action here on Oklahoma State throughout the week. Mike Gundy has been a really good moneymaker ATS long term. Since 2005, his teams are 107 and 82. That's almost 57% ATS. So a big moneymaker. How about as an underdog? Gundy 14-4 against the spread in his last 5 years as an underdog. His team has won 11 of those games outright. So I certainly lean toward Gundy and Oklahoma State here. Their cover margin in those games as an underdog is 9.3 points per game cover against the spread, which is very impressive. So they have a bye week to get ready for this game while Texas is coming off that heartbreaking loss. You couldn't set up a spot any better for Oklahoma State. The one concern I have about Oklahoma State, and this is why I won't be betting any large amounts on this if I do bet it, is Oklahoma State to me still is one-dimensional. Spencer Sanders not a good passer. Oklahoma State has to be able to run. Their running game hasn't really been very good this year, but I think that they'll be able to run against Texas because everybody's been able to run on Texas so far. The question here is, how does Oklahoma State's defense do against Texas run game with Robinson? Texas has been able to run the ball extremely well this year, but Oklahoma State arguably, I think probably is the best run defense they've played against so far this year. They're 11th in the country in yards per carry allowed. I think that the other thing that some people overlook is special teams. Oklahoma State graded as number 2 in the nation at PFF and special teams. So this is going to get you some covers and some close wins in games that it looks like you shouldn't have won. I expect a close game here, and I would take the points in this one.
Yeah, and a couple other notes on this game, Kyle, that the underdog has covered the last 4 meetings between these two teams, and they've had since 2017 2 overtime games. Last year, Texas won in overtime in Stillwater. and a 3-point game, a 6-point game. So you know when these teams get together, it's going to be close. And Oklahoma State, undefeated. You know, we talk about all these big teams in the Big 12, but Oklahoma State's still standing. And again, for Texas, it's just the key of can they bounce back from last week. So you got some good numbers there on Oklahoma State. Now let's look at the other side as far as we go from a letdown with Texas because of the loss to now Iowa. Do you have a letdown off the big win over Penn State? And the Hawkeyes host Purdue. This is a revenge spot for Iowa. Purdue beat Iowa last season. And again, Iowa much improved. But what are your thoughts here with the Hawkeyes hosting the Boilermakers and trying to avoid a letdown here?
Yeah, Kevin, it's hard to believe the number 2 team in the country, Iowa, a team that I like in general. You know, I'm a Buckeyes fan, obviously, first, but I like Iowa. Love the tradition they have there after the first quarter with waving to the kids. I think that's the best tradition in college football at this point. But, you know, Iowa gets out with the win against Penn State. They were very fortunate to win that game. And it's hard to believe the team that's ranked number 2 in the country has as weak of an offense as they do. Iowa just not good offensively, 121st in the nation in yards per play. They've obviously benefited from great starting field position because they've turned over the opponents. You know, is that something that they can keep doing? I mean, this is a pretty good secondary and this defense is really good. So I wouldn't put it past them to be able to keep doing quite a bit of that. I will say though, this is a really low total. I think this is a low total for a good reason. And road underdogs of 7 points or more with a total of 45.5 or less are 60.2% ATS in the last 15 years. I always try to come with some stats, and I think that's a really good angle long term because it's a pretty big sample size to take a team like Purdue in this game. You know, I think that Iowa will win this game straight up. 12 points is quite a bit, though, in a game with a total of 43. And this Purdue defense is far better than most people realize. They're number 3 in the nation in success rate allowed on defense. I don't think Iowa will score a lot of points unless it's just defensive or special teams touchdowns here. So I have to grab the points here if I'm taking anything here. I think low scoring game, 12 points, is quite a bit.
And also, what's interesting, Kyle, about Purdue is they've outgained all 5 of their opponents. They may not score points, 13 against Minnesota, 13 against Illinois, 13 against Notre Dame, but they've outgained them all, 5-0 to the under. So, again, Iowa, this does feel like for a team that doesn't score a lot, that this is a lot of points to lay.
Yeah, this is just too many for me to lay with a team like Iowa. Iowa's a team that I'd like to lay, 2.5 or 3 points if I'm laying points with them because I think they're going to play a lot of close games. You're laying this big of a number. I lean to the under and I lean toward Purdue as well here at that big number.
So we go from a 43 total, Kyle, to 82, Ole Miss and Tennessee hooking up in Knoxville. And we saw the crazy win Mississippi had last week against Arkansas. And Tennessee is just putting up a ton of points right now that it seemed like it took a little bit of time for Josh Heupel's offense to get going. But against Missouri, they score over 60. Against South Carolina, they light them up. And now expect another shootout potentially. That total of 82 at Neyland Stadium coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it's hard to take over 82, but there's no way you could take the under in this. There's no way I could take the under in a game like this because second in the nation in pace of play is Ole Miss. Third in the nation is Tennessee. So we're going to see some really fast pace. I don't see either of these teams, the coaches there wanting to slow this game down. It's also hard to overstate how much better Hendon Hooker has been than Milton at Tennessee. Even against South Carolina last week, 45 points and 38 of them at halftime. So they definitely took their foot off the gas in that one. I think that Tennessee can score a lot on an Ole Miss defense that has been pretty exposed here of late. Certainly, they look like they were better earlier in the season, but that was basically who they were playing against. And on the other side, Matt Corral has been fantastic all year. The Ole Miss offensive line has dominated basically everybody except for Bama. Tennessee ranks 71st in pass rushing grade. I think Corral will have time to throw in this one and will make some big plays. Ole Miss has scored 52 points or more already 3 times this year. So we've seen that they can put up a huge number. And as you said, Tennessee then put up 62 on Missouri, which is ridiculous. Missouri, really bad defense, but the pace that this game is going to be played at, I think this game could be extremely high scoring. Ole Miss has allowed 6.67 yards per play in their 2 SEC games. That's Bama and Arkansas. Their rushing defense grade on PFF is 93rd. So I think Tennessee is going to bust some really big plays in the run game here. I think if I were forced to take a side here, I'd probably take Ole Miss. I like their offense a little bit better, but not real confident on that. And I do lean to the over in this one. Like I said, it's hard to take over 82, so this is not going to be a big bet or anything. But if I had to bet this game, I'd bet the over.
And we'll look at this game in the Pac-12, Arizona State and Utah. And Utah, a big win over USC last week. Arizona State, they're playing well. And they beat Stanford. They beat UCLA. They're looking good in the Pac-12. Again, feels like Pac-12 every year is a wide-open conference. But your thoughts here, the Utes now a short favorite against the Sun Devils.
Yeah, I kind of think Arizona State's the best team in the Pac-12, but I also kind of worry about them for this game. I think Utah is just this fantastic home field advantage. Salt Lake City at elevation, really good crowd there, and Kyle Whittingham can coach, that's for sure. So I think Utah had kind of underwhelmed for much of the season. Then they played really well last week against USC. Cam Rising there at quarterback has taken more shots downfield. They've been a little bit more successful there in the offense with him. Now, it's fair to say that, they were playing USC last week, and now they're playing an Arizona State defense that's far better. Having said that, I do kind of think both offenses have enough of an advantage that the over has some value here. I think over 51 is my favorite play in this one because Arizona State should be able to run the ball here. Utah has not been very good stopping the run this season. In fact, 66th in rushing play success rate allowed, and Arizona State's third in rushing play success rate on offense. So I think Arizona State will be able to run the football here. Jaden Daniels, quarterback, a bit inconsistent in the passing game, but really a very good scrambler. I think he'll make some plays there for Arizona State. And Utah, I really think their offense is improving now. Brewer just didn't fit very good in this offense, it seems. And they do have some playmakers. I think Cam Rising can get the ball out there to them some. I kind of like over 51 in this game. I think this should be a really fantastic game. So I'm looking forward to watching this one.
All right. So anything else, Kyle, that sticks out to you as far as some of the other games on the slate?
Yeah, I have to talk about some under the radar games because, anybody who follows me, there's under the radar picks from me every single week. That's what I've done the best on usually. So looking at under the radar games here this week, I think there's some MAC games this week that we could have some value on the under based on the weather. So let's take a look at the Toledo game against Central Michigan. Toledo's defense has been exceptional this season. They look like the best defense in the MAC by pretty large margin. If you look at the weather forecast for that game, we're looking at a forecast of somewhere in the realm of 15 to 20 miles per hour winds. So that usually affects the game quite a bit in college football to where there's going to be a lot more running, more conservative play on offense. I would think that this game could be pretty low scoring with the Toledo team that plays pretty slowly, a Central Michigan team that's not very good offensively to start with. And Central Michigan's only good at stopping one thing, and that's stopping the run. I think Toledo will be running quite a bit here. So a total of 52 and a half, depending on the book here. So I would lean toward that one going under the total there in the MAC. And let's mention Bama and Mississippi State at least real quick here. I think this could be a get-right spot for Bama. Bama played poorly last week, got inside the red zone, couldn't cash in on touchdowns. I think that they have a pretty good bounce-back spot here. I like Bama in the first half here against Mississippi State. This is where I think that they kind of get right. I know Mississippi State's a well-coached defense. The problem with Mississippi State is they're so one-dimensional on offense, and I think Bama will be able to tee off on that and have a good pass rush. So I think Bama's extreme talent advantage there will end up winning out in that one.
Kyle Hunter is 28-7-1 in college football. He was 4-1 last week. He's at 80%. And Kyle will be the first to say that it's not going to stay long-term. It doesn't happen that way, but you might as well ride it now while he's hot. And how many selections are going to finish off with when it's all said and done for this weekend?
So I think there's probably going to be 4 or 5 selections this week. I do kind of think this week's card's a little bit difficult. So, full transparency there. I think that, I'm not going to have my 8 or 9 plays that I have sometimes, but, went 4-1 on the 5-play card last weekend. So let's hope to replicate that once again.
Yeah, you can find Kyle also on Twitter at Kyle Hunter Picks. Does a great job with the college football, especially the totals, and he's number 1 right now in college football at Vegas Insider. Kyle, thank you so much. Best of luck, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks a lot.
All right, there is Kyle Hunter, and 28-7-1. That is not easy to do, and hopefully he keeps it up. And I know that we always know it's never easy to keep that up, but still, that's an amazing job by Kyle so far. And great college football insight from him. We're going to get to Mark Franco coming up in just a moment to talk NFL for week number 6. But first, I want to tell you about WynnBET. And the WynnBET mobile sportsbook app, you can get it on iOS or Android. And when you download the WynnBET mobile sportsbook and you're a new patron, you get a $1,000 risk-free bet with a $20 minimum first deposit and eligible sports bet when you use the promo VI bonus. That means if you lose your first wager, you get it back up to $1,000 as a free bet credit that you can use for another bet. And this WynnBET promo code will expire soon, so make sure you grab it while you can. Also, WynnBET is legal in the following states: New Jersey, Colorado, Indiana, Virginia, Arizona, Tennessee, and Michigan. Must be 21 years or older to play. And again, full terms and conditions apply. That is WynnBET. Now, let us transition to the NFL. And we talked with our friend Mark Franco, who is on with us. And Mark, good to see you again. And I guess a very interesting week out in Las Vegas as far as the Raiders go, right?
First, I'd like to mention ride the wave with Kyle there on his college picks because, it's very hard to sustain numbers like that. Trust me, I always start out very well in the NFL. But, it's been more than an interesting week here in Las Vegas, obviously, with the whole John Gruden thing. It's literally front page news in the newspaper. It's the lead story on the nightly news. It's been a pretty crazy week. It's kind of died down now, but I think he just had no choice but to obviously resign because the NFL owners would have put too much pressure on Mark Davis to fire him. And I think that was kind of the easy way out, so to speak. But I don't think the Raiders are a dead team at 3-2. We've seen both the scenarios when, especially in the NFL, when an interim coach has to come in. Some do very well and support the team, and others just can't get enough out of the talent. But I think Rich Bisaccia, who is the Raiders coach, is his first cousin, is a personal friend of mine. We watch a lot of football together. So very happy for Rich. And I think he'll do a good job. The offense has got to get clicking. I mean, last week, looking at Gruden on the sideline last week, Kev, it just, without him having to say anything, just the look on his face, I don't think the Raiders were in that game. There was too many distractions. To lose to the Bears like that and a rookie quarterback in Justin Fields wasn't a pretty sight. I just think their heads weren't in the game. And, now with Gruden resigning, hopefully all that stuff is behind them. They can move forward as still a 3-2 football team. Let's not forget that fact.
Yeah, we'll get to the Raiders and Broncos coming up just a second. And before we hit on the NFL, any thoughts on, because we didn't talk about it in the open, about last night, Dodgers-Giants, LA beat San Francisco. They advanced now to the NLCS. They matched up with the Braves for a second straight season. San Francisco, great season, but now it's done. Check swing at the end, which did not go for the Giants. So what were your thoughts on that game last night?
Now, first off, I wish it was a 7-game series instead of a 5-game series, because if there's two teams that ever deserve to play in a 7-game series, it's the Giants and the Dodgers with the two best records in all of baseball. But was a shame to see the game end like that. I had the Giants. I'll be honest. I was on the Giants side squarely. Once the Dodgers got up 2-1, I didn't think the Giants were dead. I thought they had a good chance, even though Scherzer came in and you knew he was going to throw strikes. They did have a man on first base when that call got called to be called out on a last pitch of a series in that magnitude with a check swing that was a check swing. He did not break his wrist. I mean, I watched it 5 times. I've been watching baseball since I was 5 years old. Thought it was a horrible call. And I hope that first base umpire does not get to umpire another game in the postseason.
It was bad. It really was. And you kind of feel at times, Mark, that I know it's a judgment call, but you get to that point, I always feel like get it right. If you had to look at a replay and if it was close, then you say, okay, we can't reverse it. But when it's not even close,
right,
you should go back and say, okay, it's a ball.
Yep.
And continue the game. And the Dodgers can't complain. I had the under, so it didn't matter. I didn't have a side in the game, but where at least you say, okay, it's not a swing, so let's just move on. It's a ball, and we keep going, and then nobody can complain about it.
Absolutely, that would have been the fair thing to do.
Yeah.
To be able to replay this, but not that, that kind of stuff. And you're right, it's a judgment call. It was just bad luck for baseball. You kind of feel like they wanted the Dodgers to win that series.
So we got Dodgers, Braves, Red Sox, Astros should be kind of interesting when those teams get together coming up tonight in Houston. Now, Mark, 4 games I want to go over with you in the NFL, and you so far this season, 23, 15, and 1 in the NFL, 60%. So you are rolling along, and you didn't have a play on last night's game on the Bucs-Eagles. Any thoughts on that? Tampa Bay up 28-7. Philly comes back. They get it down to 28-22. And the Bucs, they convert a couple third downs, then Brady kneels at the end, which was the right call. But your thoughts on the Bucs not covering that game last night where they were in complete control of it?
Well, I thought the number was right on. I didn't think Philly would get that far behind and come back, but didn't have a play on the game, so I didn't watch a whole lot of it, Kev. I was watching more of the baseball game as an old traditionalist that I am, even though baseball is kind of really hard to watch sometimes. Just like last night, I was mostly watching the baseball game, but Brady does what he has to do to win a game, and it's pretty much that simple. The secondary was so banged up. I think that's why the Eagles were able to get some points on the board later in that game. So probably the best thing for Tampa Bay is that they played on Thursday night. They'll get some rest headed into next week 7.
Now let's look at Sunday's card, Mark, and you have a NFC North battle in which, again, these teams know each other very well, the Packers and the Bears. They meet at Soldier Field on Sunday. Green Bay, 0-1, losing to New Orleans, doom and gloom. All of a sudden now they've won 4 straight. They've covered all 4. And Chicago, like you mentioned, they go to Vegas last week. Good win for them on the road. They've won a few in a row. So Packers have won 4 straight against Chicago. What are your thoughts here on this matchup of these old rivals at Soldier Field?
Well, I'll start off with the Bears. I'm not going to put too much stock into the way they the way they beat the Raiders last week. That was kind of a rough situation for the Raiders, and I think Justin Fields played well. Is he going to play well enough to be a every week quarterback? The jury's still out on that, but I know Bear fans have high hopes for him, and they should. When it comes to the Packers, barely got a cover last week. That was with the closing number, Kev, of 2.5 against the Cincinnati Bengals, where that game was kind of one of the weirdest games I've ever watched. I mean, we've all seen missed kicks before, but there was missed extra points, missed field goals. Then we had overtime with missed kicks. It was a sweat job for me, to be honest, because I had the Packers. So at the end, I came out fortunate, but that was one weird game last week, Cincinnati and Green Bay, and that very well could have ended in a tie.
Yeah, and Green Bay fortunate to win that game, so they're rolling along now. And again, for the Chicago Bears, what do you think about this offense with Justin Fields? I mean, again, the numbers aren't good with him, but it's better than Andy Dalton out there. So Fields will be good eventually, but what can he do against this Packers defense where the Packers are loaded offensively? Does it have to be a shootout for Chicago, or they got to win this low-scoring game?
I think it would have to be somewhat of a shootout. I think, Justin Fields is the lesser of 2 evils when we're talking about Andy Dalton. And, the Bears aren't going to win a Super Bowl this year. Maybe they can be a playoff team, but I just think you keep Justin Fields in for the rest of the year. I think in order for the Bears to be in this game, they're going to have to score somewhere around the 24-point range, or else the Packers – I don't see the Bears' defense being good enough to stop Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, although the Packers are playing – on the road for a second straight week. Keep that in mind. And this line is ticked up earlier in the week. You could have got the Packers at 4.5. Now I see a lot of spots that have Packers minus 5.5 at the moment.
And also in the AFC, Mark, let's transition to this. The Chargers off that big win over the Browns last week, the back and forth affair, and Justin Herbert continues to play very well for LA. And they got to go cross country now to face a Baltimore team that was dead in the water against Indianapolis Monday night. They come back. They shock the Colts in overtime. Lamar Jackson plays extremely well in the second half. He has crazy completion numbers in the game. So the Ravens now laying 2.5 against the Chargers, who are 8-1 straight up against the spread going back to last year. So they're rolling along. You know, it's always going to be a close game with the Chargers just going back. But your thoughts here on Baltimore and LA?
Well, I think as good as the Ravens played on Monday night in the second half and in overtime, I think it was just as much as you could make a case for the Colts gave the game away. Just couldn't stop them at the end of that game. And, you know, Lamar Jackson, I got to give him credit. I mean, he played a great game, probably the best game of his career. I believe he had the most passing yards of any game he's played. And, you know, the Ravens are going to come and bring it every week and be focused. I mean, that's just Harbaugh's, you know, MO from the beginning when he took over this team years ago. And when you're looking at the Chargers, you know, new coaches definitely sparked this team. And Kev, for me, when I look at the Chargers, watched the entire game last week with the Chargers against the Browns, great entertaining game. Wish we can get more games like that through the regular season. But every time I look at Justin Herbert, I get sick to my stomach. And the reason I do is because as a Miami Dolphin fan, as you know, we could have had Justin Herbert, but instead we took Tua, and, you know, we're stuck with what we're stuck with. But I just love Justin Herbert. I think he's the absolute mold in an NFL quarterback. His size, his weight, his demeanor, a lot smarter than people thought. I just think this kid's on his way to very possibly being the MVP in the league this year. And this is going to be a great game. This is definitely my game of the week that not only am I going to wager on, have on Vegas Insider, but I'll probably watch every play in this game from beginning to end. It's just a very, very intriguing game with two of the best teams in the AFC.
And we'll see, Mark, if the Chargers belong. And it's not about if they lose this game that they're a fraud, but if they win this game, that means they'll have won at Baltimore. They'll have won at Kansas City. They'll have beaten Cleveland at home. I mean, these are all playoff teams in the AFC. So for the Chargers, yeah, you lose, not the end of the world, but you win. All of a sudden now you're for real. That right. You're not just a fly-by-night team. But the Chargers, though, we'll see what they do going cross country.
One quick thing about this game, Kev, is you got two different kind of analogies here where the Chargers throw the ball and they throw it with success. What's the Ravens' weakness? Their secondary. And then if you flip the side, what's the Chargers' weakness? They can't stop the run. They're horrible at stopping the run. What's Baltimore's strength? Obviously, no matter who's the running back for the Ravens, they're going to run the ball and they're going to make it a point to get their yards on the ground regardless. So that's where this game's going to come down to an interesting, almost like a chess match.
Yeah, and they have the best running quarterback in the league, Lamar Jackson. So if the Ravens can't run the ball, the running back, they'll just have Lamar run the ball because no one can stop them. Now, in the AFC West, we mentioned it before, so let's hit on this game now. Raiders and Broncos in Denver. And just so many different things going into this. We talked about Gruden earlier, but part of me thinks, Mark, that for the Raiders, this is a huge spot from the standpoint of if Gruden was that much of a distraction, it's probably a good thing he's gone. That, the Bears game, it just didn't work out. That now you can kind of hit the refresh button here moving forward. If we see if the Raiders start to tank, then there's just a lot more stuff going on the inside. But on the flip side with Denver, if you're the Raiders, you're catching a Broncos team that was 3-0. They beat three not great teams. They lose to Baltimore convincingly at home. They were down big to Pittsburgh last week before they came back, made it interesting, but the Steelers were in control of that game. So now we'll see if the Broncos are still for real or not. And for the Raiders, if they could bounce back here, it would really put a damper on the Broncos in the AFC West.
Yeah, I kind of went back and forth on this game, to be honest. My first reaction was take the Broncos. After doing a lot of research on the Raiders and seeing what their mindset is, I kind of want to go towards the Raiders now. So in that situation, I'll probably pass on this game. I think the line might be a little bit high, a little inflated because of the Gruden situation, but I'm not going to give up any points when it comes to the Raiders just because Gruden's not there. I mean, first off, John Gruden wasn't a terrific, fantastic coach. Was he a good coach? I think so in his career, but he's not an outstanding, great Hall of Fame coach, in my opinion. He took Tony Dungy's team in Tampa and won a Super Bowl. But regardless of that fact, I think the Raiders are going to be on the uptick. They're going to be excited. They're going to have energy. It's not going to be like it was last week against the Chicago Bears, a total letdown where it seemed like they didn't care at all. I think the exact opposite is going to happen. So I'm going to look for a full effort here with the Raiders on the road. And also in the last couple of years, don't have the numbers in front of me, but the Raiders have kind of dominated the Broncos in recent years. So that's another thing to consider. So tough game for me. Probably won't have it on my card, but if I did, I'd have to lean towards the Raiders plus the 4 based on that weight off of their shoulders, I guess you can say.
And looking at the numbers too, Mark, 4-1 the last 5. The Raiders against the Broncos. Last year, they swept them. They beat them convincingly in Vegas, won by 1 in Week 17.
Hell of a comeback in Week 17. Remember that game? Yep.
So the Raiders, they've had the Broncos number. And, again, big spot for both these teams. I mean, I feel like in the NFL, we say that every week, which is true. But just for the different reasons where Denver's at, starting 3-0, they don't want to drop 3 straight. And the Raiders, all the problems they've had with the Gruden situation. Now, the final game we're going to look at is the Sunday night showdown, which NBC, again, is really thrilled with, getting Geno Smith and the struggling Seahawks against the Steelers on Sunday night. I feel like this line has been jacked up a little too much. Pittsburgh laying 5.5. Good win over Denver last week, snapping a 3-game skid. I'm not ready to close the book yet on Seattle, but, again, they're struggling in a tough NFC West. But you think this is too many points for Pittsburgh to lay?
I'm going to kind of scratch my head here, Kevin. Geno Smith, guy that I believe shouldn't even be in the league, let alone holding the clipboard as a backup for the Seahawks. But, now that Russell Wilson is out, he gets thrust into duty here. And I think against the Steelers defense, although they've been a little bit on the disappointing side, the Steelers defense has, but they played a good game against the Broncos last week. Pittsburgh had success running the ball against that Broncos defense last week. And Pittsburgh does not usually have a lot of success running the ball. So you got the Geno Smith factor. To me, that's a stay away from Seattle as far as I can stay away. Number 2 reason, Seattle's one of the worst teams in the National Football League on the defensive side of the ball. And funny to say that under the Pete Carroll era, where they've been, at least in the top 5 or top 10 defensively over the years. And this year so far, they can't stop anybody. So, I think as long as Roethlisberger don't make mistakes, Pittsburgh should handle that game. But, yeah, very crooked number, as I call it, at 5.5, Kev.
Yeah, and we'll see if Pittsburgh can maybe start to turn things around a little bit. And again, Seattle in a very tough spot because you're looking up at an undefeated team in Arizona, the Rams with a loss. San Francisco is gonna fall back a little bit with the Garoppolo injury, and even Trey Lance is banged up. But Seattle going cross country, never easy, and we see a couple teams doing that this week. But again, they play at night, so not as much of a disadvantage. So that's it for this week in the NFL. Anything else you want to add for the week that you're looking at, Mark?
No, just you can look at my picks. Usually my NFL picks are posted by Saturday morning or around noon Eastern time Saturday. So check out for that. Still doing very well in the NFL, off a 3-3 week last week. So it was my first ho-hum week of the year, so to speak. So looking to get back on top this week with some good quality NFL plays available only on VegasInsider.com.
Yeah, check out Mark's plays, senior handicapper, VegasInsider.com. He's been here for a very long time, covering the NFL, college football, NBA starts next week, Major League Baseball. So basically all of it. He runs the gamut, running all of it. So Mark Franco, again, thank you so much for joining us here on the Daily Insider, and we'll talk to you again soon.
You got it, Kev. I look forward to joining you again soon. Everybody have a winning weekend.
All right, there is Mark Franco. And Mark always has a lot of good insight there in the NFL. I'm telling you, that Raiders game, I do like them. I do lean towards them just because I believe getting Gruden out of there is probably a good thing. And I know that the week after, if you want to maybe wait on the Raiders and see how they respond, but you're also catching a Denver team going backwards a little bit. And the Broncos are getting better, but are they a team that could be in the playoffs? I don't think not yet. So that should be very intriguing coming up on Sunday afternoon. Now let's go over our best bets for the NFL. And last week, 1-1, won with the Eagles in their comeback against Carolina, lost with the football team of Washington, and they fell to the Saints at home. That game should have been tied at the half, but then Jameis Winston threw that Hail Mary, and that kind of derailed everything. The Saints got a nice win on the road over Washington, so we went 1-1 there. So for this week's best bets, We're going to take a couple favorites. And first, the Minnesota Vikings. They go to Carolina to face the Panthers. And Carolina, off that loss to Philadelphia last week, Sam Darnold got picked off a few times. Carolina is not exactly a team that, I love. And Matt Rule is not a good favorite. Now you're getting him as a dog. But I feel like with Minnesota, here's a short favorite on the road that says something. And Minnesota off that last second win over Detroit, maybe that turns them around a little bit. And Carolina, again, off to a good start on the season, but now they've dropped a few in a row. So quickly, you're sinking in that NFC South behind the likes of Tampa Bay, who won last night, and even New Orleans, who's still pretty good. We know Atlanta is kind of but I think Minnesota's a good look here on the road. And Indianapolis. And, yeah, Indianapolis blew that big lead against Baltimore on Monday night. And usually the rule of thumb, what I heard a long time ago, is you don't back teams off bad losses like that. But they're playing Houston. And Houston is off a bad loss to New England, in which they were leading most of that game, and then the Patriots beat them by a field goal. So I'm not, out of the two teams to say, who do you trust less? I trust Houston less than Indianapolis here. And both teams having the same record, but the Colts laying 10. It's a lot to eat, but Indianapolis is just the better team. And Houston isn't better than a lot of teams in this league. Maybe they're better than one team, and that's Jacksonville, who they beat in week 1, and Jacksonville's 0-5 so far in the season. So I'm not going to take the points with the Texans, who actually have some covers as big dogs against New England last week, against Cleveland in week 2. But that team's also been blown out by 40 points against Buffalo, and Buffalo's way better than Indianapolis, but still. So the Vikings and Colts, those are going to be our two best bets for this week. Now, before we exit, I want to tell you about our friends at BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks, and it's very simple. The promotion going on now for new players only. Bet $10 to win $200 if your team scores a touchdown. Bet on any NFL money line, and if your team scores a touchdown, you'll receive an additional $200 in free bets. It's for new players only. Must be 21 years or older, eligible in Arizona, New Jersey, Indiana, Colorado, Tennessee, West Virginia, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C. Full terms and conditions apply. That is BetMGM. They are the king of sportsbooks. And also, we got tonight, forgot to mention this, or at least got to at least put it out there, Red Sox and Astros in Major League Baseball. I know we got 4 games in college football, Clemson, Syracuse, Cal and Oregon. Cal's been a great road dog. But the ALCS starts tonight in Houston. Astros laying 140 at BetMGM. Fromber, Valdez, and Chris Sale on the mound, a couple lefties. Astros offense blew up against the White Sox in the ALDS. Boston got shut out in the first game against Tampa Bay, and then they got things going the last 3 victories over the Rays. I just think here it may go backwards, a total of 8.5. We could see a lower scoring game. Valdez had 2 really good starts against Boston earlier this season. Sale didn't face the Astros. And also Chris Sale off a terrible 1 inning of work against Tampa Bay in game 2 of the ALDS. Gave up 5 runs, also a grand slam, and he got pulled through about 35 pitches. So I think in this spot, you're getting Sale, who's still a top-tier pitcher, and Valdez, who's pretty solid as well. I know both lineups can hit all over the place, but maybe the under is worth a look after seeing all these overs in the first round with those teams. And you have Dodgers Braves tomorrow. They will start the NLCS in Atlanta. Now, even though the Dodgers had the better record, that will only matter in the World Series. But in this scenario, the Dodgers are the road team. Now, Max Fried will start for Atlanta. Dodgers still don't know who they're going to start. They were going to start Julio Urias last night, and hours before the game, Dave Roberts decided not to start him. He pitched Urias in about the 3rd inning last night. So who knows who's going to start that game. Max Scherzer got the save for the Dodgers last night. So LA just trying to put something together to get their pitching staff back in order. But the Braves off the 3-1 victory over the Brewers in the last round. We'll see if Atlanta can knock off LA this time. Last year up 3-1 on the Dodgers, and they lost the final 3. So at least now Atlanta's got the home field advantage over LA in the NLCS. Mike, thanks to Kyle Hunter for joining us, talking college football. Mark Franco talking NFL. We'll be back with you coming up on Monday at noon. And Dave Sherapan will join us like he does every Monday, former odds maker, to go over the weekend in the NFL. And again, if you missed any of the show, you could find it on VegasInsider.com and also on our YouTube channel at Vegas Insider, the Daily Insider. That's the name of the show. And again, want to thank you for tuning in. We will be back with you coming up on Monday at noon. So take it easy. I am Kevin Rogers. And as always, best of luck with your bets.